Hello, Upward Bound friends. It's Buckley here. We are going to do a couple exercises that build on what we learned in Tuesday's session. So if you remember what we did in Tuesday's session, we talked about additive and subtractive operations. We focused on the extrude operation to create a model of our puzzle block. So everybody made a puzzle block, and then we went around and we thought about how we might physically represent that puzzle block using the extrude operation. And we talked about additive and subtractive extrude operations. So we're ready to try to get the computer to do these extrude operations. So the same logic that we used when we were working through the worksheet, we're now going to use when we're using our solid model. So we're going to use a program called Solidworks. This is the name of it. This is a CAD program. Some of you may be familiar with other CAD packages, software packages. So last year, if you were in Upward Bound, we used Autodesk Inventor, which is very similar. Tinkercad, there's a lot of other programs. So, and they all work the same way, which is good. So once you speak one of these languages, all the other languages are much easier. All right, enough talking, let's get to work. So this is the SolidWorks starting page, and what we're going to do is we're going to start a new document. So I'm just going to go to New, and I have three options when this comes up. I could make a new part, I could make an assembly, or I could make a drawing. For our workshop over the next 4 weeks, we're going to focus on parts and assemblies. Okay, so we're going to do these two documents. So I'm going to just do a part to start. So I'm going to click on part and then click OK. All right, so when I do that, I come up with blank space. So if you use Microsoft Word or Notebook or anything like that to write your essays for class, you'll be familiar with a blank page, right? That's how everything starts. This blank page is special though because it's three-dimensional space. So there's an X, Y, and a Z. This is length, width, and depth. This is space, okay, virtually. What we're going to do now is we are going to do the same types of operations that we practice in class. So I'm going to start by going to the Sketch tab. So notice there's some tabs up top here, right? The two that we're going to use the most frequently are Features and Sketch. So note where my cursor is, Features and Sketch. Okay, and I'm going to go to Sketch, and then I'm going to click on the Sketch button. This is like SolidWorks then gives me a piece of paper, okay? And I need to pick which paper I want to sketch on, so I could sketch on the front plane piece of paper, the top plane, or the right plane. I'm just going to sketch on the front plane. It doesn't matter all that much. Okay, and then I'm going to go and I'm going to sketch a rectangle. So you'll see these tools up here. These look like things I could draw with, right? So I'm going to sketch a rectangle. And right now, I don't want us worried about how big things are. We'll deal with that in a second. So I sketched a rectangle, and we're going to do Gianna's puzzle cube, right, which is the one that we worked on together as a group. I'll do that first, and then I want to do one more, which was a puzzle block that I saw a lot of people doing. So we'll do that together, too. All right, so I've sketched my rectangle. Now I'm going to exit the sketch, and I'm going to do that extrude operation. So I want to make sure everybody saw that, sorry. I'm going to click now, I exited the sketch, and I'm going to click on Extrude, okay, and SolidWorks is smart. It says, hey, I think you want to extrude this rectangle that you just drew. Well, I'm going to extrude it out. I'm going to do 0.75 inches, okay, which is about the size of those blocks that I gave you, right? So I controlled the depth here with this button, right? So it started out as 0.1, that's super thin. I'm now going to do 0.75, okay, and I'm going to click OK. So now I have a block, right? I have a block, and I want to show you this block. I'm going to spin this block around in space, and I'm going to be very explicit about what I'm doing with my controls. So I'm sitting in my office at my laptop, which has SolidWorks, and I have a 3-button mouse next to me. When you guys are in the eCalc lab, you will also have a 3-button mouse. There's a left button, a right button, and then there's a center scroll bar. So let me first show you what the scroll bar does. So if I roll the scroll bar in and out, this zooms in and out, okay, in and out. right? And it's going to zoom wherever my cursor is. So if I'm over here, it's zooming in and out right on my cursor. But if I want to zoom in and out on this object, I'm going to do this. The next thing I want to show you is how to rotate an object. So if I, instead of rolling my center bar, if I hold down the center scroll button and wiggle my mouse around on the screen while I'm holding it down, it's going to spin the object. Okay, that's what that does. Alrighty. And then left is for select, right is for a drop-down menu. Left is selecting something, like I selected that face. Right gives me a drop-down menu. So again, the most common commands you're doing with your mouse are in and out to zoom, rotating, which is holding down that center scroll button. So in and out is scrolling with the center scroll button. If I hold down that center scroll button and move my mouse, I can rotate the object. Left is select, right is a drop-down menu. Okay? And we'll use all of those things. And if it feels like a struggle in the beginning, that's perfectly normal. It'll get easier as we go along. All right, so I want to go back to what we were doing. So we made this first block, all right? And we did that by drawing a rectangle and then extruding, doing an additive extrusion operation forward. If you remember, Gianna's puzzle block had a little window cut out here, right? So it's kind of L-shaped. So I'm now going to make that, okay? So I'm going to go back to sketching, and I am going to sketch on this top surface. Notice it says selected surface to sketch on. I'm going to select this top surface. Now I'm going to draw a rectangle again. This time I'm going to go, whoops, I didn't like that. I'm actually going to use a different rectangle tool. So I'm going to use the corner rectangle tool. So there's a couple different tools we can use, and we'll help you with these in class, okay? So I drew a rectangle on that top surface. Now I'm going to exit the sketch. I'm going to go back to features, and instead of adding, so extruded boss base is my additive extrude, I'm going to do something called Extrude Cut. You can see it gives a preview. Hey, I think you want to do this, right? I think you want to drop straight down, right? And it's already got 0.75, but if I wanted to make a shallower cut, I could do this. If I wanted to make a big cut, right, I could do this. Okay, but I like the look of that 0.75, so we're going to do that. And now I have cut away that one piece. All right. Now, if I'm remembering correctly, there's one other thing that was on Gianna's puzzle block, and that was another nub that was a width of 2 coming out this direction, right? Coming out this way. So I'm going to just repeat. I'm going to sketch on this surface. I am going to sketch another rectangle. I'm going to go like this. Like that. And I'm going to extrude it. And now I think I have something that looks like Gianna's puzzle cube. If not, you kind of get the idea, right? All right, very important thing now, folks. We're going to save. Okay, so we're going to save our part. So Solidworks will save this as a file. The file has an interesting extension, right? So it's .prt or .sldprt. All that means is PRT stands for part. Okay, it's just missing the A. So I'm going to go ahead and save this as activity. I'm going to put my name on it, Buckley. Activity 3. G's puzzle. Okay. All right, so making sure that you save your work is really important. We're going to give you some flash drives in class, and we want you to save your work onto the flash drives, okay? That way we know it's in a secure place. All right, so that's one part. Let's do one more part together to show you these two features. Again, what we're focused on here are the extrude operations, both additive and subtractive. So I'm going to make a new part. I'm going to go up to my new page. So this is just like opening another file if you were in Microsoft Word. I'm going to click OK. And I want to do that really funky, like star-shaped cube that a lot of you guys were doing. Okay, and let me show you how this would work. So I'm in 3D space, right? Nothing going on. I'm going to start by making a sketch. Okay, so I'm going to sketch on the front plane again, because that's just kind of how I like to start. And I'm going to start by making a rectangle. And this time I am going to pay attention to how big things are. Okay, so last time I really didn't. So let me show you another cool thing. If I go to this Smart Dimension tool and I click on one of these sides, I can prescribe how long that side is. So right now, that side is 3.40566.038 inches. Oh my goodness. Okay, that doesn't mean anything to me, right? In reality, that side would be made up of 3 of those blocks that I gave you. Each of those blocks is 0.75 inches, right? 0.75 times 3 should give me 2.25 inches on that side, right? So that changed this length to 2.25 inches. Now I can change this length also to 2.25 inches, and I have a perfect square that is 2.25 inches, right? Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I am going to make another couple rectangles. And I'm going to use a different, notice how I used a center out rectangle, and I centered it on the middle of my space. The middle of my space is marked with these little red arrows, okay? We call that the origin. So depending on what math everybody is in, okay, if you're maybe a junior or a senior, you might have seen something called an origin before. If you're just beginning, don't worry about it. It's called an origin, all right? So I selected this to create this first square. I am going to use a different different rectangle tool, the corner rectangle tool, to create another block. I'm going to Smart Dimension that guy. That guy should be 0.75, right? And it didn't like that. Let's ignore for a second. So I'm going to undo it. So if you want to undo something, you can use the Control-Z function or this arrow up here. So I'm going to undo making that rectangle because SolidWorks wasn't happy. And I'm actually going to delete these guys. Now let's see how this goes. I'm going to do this. I'm going to call it 0.75. And I'll call this 0.75. Click OK. And now I'm going to cut away. So I have an eraser tool. My eraser tool is called Trim Entities. So I'm going to go to Trim Entities. And I've got many options, right? The one that I like to use, I almost exclusively use, is this bottom one, Trim to Closest. Okay? So when I do this, it's going to allow me to delete away things that I don't want, right? So I didn't want those 2 sides. So there we go. Let me make another one of these rectangles and delete again. Oops. So SolidWorks, like any CAD package, is going to be a struggle for about, I don't know, I give it about 2 weeks, okay? You're going to feel a little uncomfortable. And that's okay. That's where the learning happens, all right? So if this doesn't come naturally, right, if this doesn't come right away, that's totally fine. That does not mean you will not be able to do this, okay? When I first started, I will tell you, it took me a little while to get used to these types of programs. But once you learn it, everything becomes much easier. So I want you to be patient with yourselves as you're starting out. Undo that. That was not what I wanted. Okay, so everybody should now have something that looks like a plus sign, right? Or I made something that looked like a plus sign. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to exit out of my sketch and I'm going to extrude it, right? If I extrude that 0.75, pull that forward, I have the basis of my plus. All right? Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do another sketch on this surface. And I'm going to orient this. This is hard for me to see, so I want to show you something else. This is a view cubes. Notice where I am up here. These controls here control your view of the object. So I'm gonna select this front face, and that's going to cause it to align, right? I can still spin this around in space, all of that. But if I want to get a view that is dead on, I can use this view cube feature. All right, I'm going to click on my rectangle again, and I'm going to go boop, boop. Exit the sketch. Features, extrude. Okay, I'm going to take that out 0.75. And let's go do the back surface. So I'm going to repeat this. Sketch. I'm going to sketch on this face. And I'll do it this time without reorienting. Exit the sketch. Extrude. All right, look familiar to some of you guys? Okay, so there is my puzzle block made exclusively with additive extrude operations. All right, and the most complicated part was getting that middle plus sign made, right? Okay, so I'm going to save this. And there we go. All right, thank you everybody. That's what I needed to show you before we work on our Thursday activities.